Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you all keeping well. For anyone new here, my name's Liz. I'm not an historian. I'm just someone who is extremely passionate about history, and I love to share all of that passion with you. So if you are new, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like and share, and don't worry, I promise I will look after you. You're in safe hands. So last week, I just want to say thank you for all your lovely comments and your kindness and your support. Last week, I wasn't in the best of places mentally. I was struggling. But this week, I am doing much better. I'm still not 100%. I don't think I ever will be. But no, I'm doing much better. And I'm now waking up feeling more positive, not hating myself, not feeling like shit, which is really quite nice. So I just spent a bit of time doing stuff for me. I spent time in my craft room. I spent time with my fur babies. I spent time with my great nephew, who's only 8 months old, and he is gorgeous. So yeah, I just spent time with that, and I spent time with friends, and we went to see Barbie movie, which was quite fun actually. It was quite funny. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So anyway, so if you are struggling at the moment, if you're going through something, I just want to say you will get that. I promise you will. And I just want to give you all a big hug. So I'm a hugger. I can't help it. I like hugging. So, and last week I done a video on Thomas Becket, which looking back on, I think I could have done a lot better. I feel I could have done more on the content of Thomas Becket. I think he deserved more. I felt like I needed to do more on him himself as a person, what he was like. So I may revisit Thomas Becket at some point in the future. But for this week, we are back with King Henry II, and all hell is breaking loose between him and his sons, and it's not a good time to be part of the Plantagenet family at this time. So if you want to find out what father and sons are up to, keep your bum right there, and I'll see you in a minute. The year is 1171. King Henry II is in Ireland, and his son and heir, the young co-king, or Henry Jr. as I like to call him, is holding his Christmas court in Normandy. And the young co-king is loving every minute of his new role. But there's some whispering going on in the court. Not about him, but about his father. The Norman nobles are complaining about how the old king has been taking their lands, he's raised the taxes, and two men go to the young Henry and they tell him of the complaints they're hearing. And they tell him it in a way that praises him. And the two men, Ralph O'Fay and Hugh of Sandmore, tell him everything he wants to hear, all while boosting his ever-growing ego. So let's have a little bit of a background on Henry Jr., but don't worry, he will be getting his own video. So for now, Henry Jr., as I call him, he was born in 1153. He spent a lot of his early years with his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, in English palaces. When Henry was 5, he was married to Margaret, Princess Margaret, daughter of King Louis. And when he was 7, he was sent to live with Thomas Becket to begin his education. However, when all of that exploded, he was quickly pulled out and brought back to be by his father's side to be shown the ways of being a king. In 1170, the young Henry was formally crowned as co-king of England, and now aged 15, annoyingly, to Henry, right, no, he's not. He was 15 when he was crowned co-king. He's not 15 now. Yeah, anyway. So annoyingly to Henry, nothing had changed. Although he had been given the titles of King of England, Duke of Normandy, Count of Anjou, he had been told that when his father dies, he will be in charge of the whole Angevin Empire, while his brothers Richard, who will be controlling Aquitaine, and Geoffrey controlling Brittany, will be reporting back to him. Henry Jr. has been given all of the titles by his father, but that was all he had been given. His father, King Henry, was still very much in control. So Henry Jr. can do all of the fun things a prince can, like go jousting and throw parties. He's even given pocket money. He is literally paying for knights to hang out with him. But dear old dad picks those knights that can actually hang out with Henry. So as for the governing, no. Only daddy can do that. So Henry Jr. is getting so frustrated with his father. King Henry has left him as regent whilst he's in Ireland, but he's still surrounded by Henry's men, his advisors, who has to go over any of Henry Jr.'s decisions, and they can even overrule him. Henry Jr. is so desperate to be given an opportunity just to prove himself as a king, but his father won't allow it. In January 1173, just over a year since the Christmas party, and Henry Jr. and his father, Henry II, is now back from Ireland, and the two are travelling to Montferrand. I hope that's the right pronunciation. Now, just on the borders of Aquitaine. Now, father and son are there on important business. There's a diplomatic assembly, which was attended by every major count within the region. Now, Henry and Henry Jr. are there to negotiate a marriage for the youngest brother, John, who was 5, to Alicia, the daughter of a wealthy lord called Humbert of Moraine. I hope that's right. The marriage would strengthen King Henry's rule in southern France, which Henry has been trying to gain control of for the past 15 years. It would also be somewhere for John to rule when he's older. Henry had nicknamed his youngest son as John Lacklands, simply because he ran out of lands to leave him. At Montferrand, King Henry drops a clanger. In his attempts to show Humbert of Moraine that he isn't just marrying his daughter off to a landless prince, he says that he will grant John a few castles elsewhere in France. Now, those castles aren't particularly important. It's more where they are that matters. The castles are in Anjou, the land that Henry Jr. is supposed to rule. They're his castles. And there's his father giving them away to a 5-year-old boy. Now, for months, Henry Jr. has been more and more frustrated that he's not being given the respect or the power he thinks he deserves. Now, Henry Jr., who's only months away from turning 18, has had enough. And he throws one massive tantrum in front of everyone. He tells his father that he won't allow for those castles to be given to John and threatens to walk out. Henry Jr. knows that he would never have any real power just by being a co-king. Now, from that moment, things drastically change with his relationship with his father. A few weeks later, everyone's at Chinon Castle, which is one of the castles that Henry wants to give to John. Now, Henry Jr. is being closely watched by a few of his father's men. And one night, the young prince or co-king decides to host a dinner party for those men. He opens them a few bottles of wine, then a few more. Go on, have one more. And then soon enough, his security guards are out cold on the floor. So Henry Jr. makes a run for it with a few of his loyal knights. They sneak out of the castle and they ride through the night, and Henry Jr. leaves his wife Margaret behind at Chinon Castle. The young co-king is going to raise an army. He's going to show dear old daddy that he's more than a king in making. Henry Jr. is going to raise a rebellion against his father. Now, when morning breaks and King Henry discovers that his son has gone, he quickly mounts his horse and goes searching for him. But Henry Jr., he's had too much of a head start, and within days, he has reached the lands of his father-in-law, King Louis. Just the man he needs to raise a rebellion against his father. The young king soon has men joining his side who has had enough of the old king's rule. But what no one saw coming was just who those high-profile rebels would be. Henry's younger brothers, Richard and Geoffrey, and the most surprising, their mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine. But before Eleanor could make it to her ex-husband's court, she was captured by King Henry's men. Henry had spies in Eleanor's household for months, and now Eleanor was being taken back to her husband. Excuse me. Now, the young Henry had the backing of Count of Flanders and the Count of Boulogne. He even had the King of Scotland backing him. So Henry had promised them massive amounts of money and lands if he won. He then persuaded his younger brothers, Richard and Geoffrey, to join. Richard, he was in training to take over Aquitaine, whilst Geoffrey was training to take over Brittany. And this was a massive blow for their father, King Henry. And as soon as he heard of their deceit, he wrote to Eleanor warning her not to follow them. But she chose her children. And the moment Henry had Eleanor back brought to him, he had his wife placed under house arrest for the next 10 years, followed by a further 6 years of what we may call now as day release. In a weird way, it was kind of like a backhanded compliment to Eleanor, as it showed, in fact, that Henry feared her most, as she posed more of a danger to him than anyone else. Now, Henry's 3 sons are with his frenemy, dare I call him? Is that even a word now? King Louis. Now, two ambassadors arrive at Louis's court from King Henry, a archbishop and a bishop, and they approach King Louis, who's got a smirk on his face, and he's very rude. He doesn't even respond to the senior churchman offering a formal greeting from their master, King Henry II of England. Now, the churchmen deliver their message. They ask for the young Henry to return. Now, King Louis asked, who sent the message? Why, King Henry of England, of course. And Louis laughs and said, quote, this cannot be possible, for the King of England is already here, and he sends no message to me through you. But even if you still call the king the father, who was formerly King of England, know that he as king is dead. And though he may still act as king, this shall be speedily remedied, as he resigned his kingdom to his son, as all the world bears witness. Louis then sends Henry's messengers away with a message of his own. Quote, the time for negotiating is over. From now on, I only recognize your sons as rulers. King Louis and the rebels had a plan. Run Henry out of Normandy at all angles, where Henry will be fighting on too many fronts, being unable to defeat them all, allowing Normandy to fall first. Normandy was the centre of the Plantagenet Empire. Normandy connects England with everything else. It also has a lot of money and is also close to Louis's court in Paris. So if they can get Normandy to fall, Henry will get stuck in England and his empire will be ripped in half and he'll be forced to negotiate. The plan is for young Henry to have England, Richard have Aquitaine, and Geoffrey to have Brittany. Henry would have Normandy back, but only if he accepts his ultimate lord is King Louis. That's their plan. Quite simple, isn't it, right? It's going to work. Great. Yeah? They're all forgetting one tinsy-wincy little important thing. King Henry is a canny and a determined politician and commander. He's experienced in warship and he has been known to have good luck on his side more than once. You would honestly think his sons didn't know their own father, wouldn't you? So in late spring 1173, what is known, the war without love begins. And it soon comes to a little bit of a halt. As the rebels soon find out, though, no matter how big an alliance the rebels have or how canny their plan is and their hostile treatments towards dear old daddy, Henry is in fact a very hard man to get the better of. Henry doesn't try to take on everything himself. He delegates. He relies on trusted deputies, giving Henry the opportunity to pop up just when he's needed most, and allowing his enemies to make mistakes, which they do a lot. In the high summer, two major rebel leaders, the Counts of Flanders and Boulogne, who happen to be brothers, they invade northern Normandy, attacking the castle Drancourt, I think it's pronounced. I hope that's pronounced right. The castle falls, but at a heavy cost. During the fighting, a crossbowman takes a pot shot at the Count of Boulogne. He gets hit in the leg, which causes a very severe wound, and infection gets in and he dies within a few days. Which means the other brother had to retire from the war, as the Count of Boulogne was his heir to Flanders, and one crossbow, 2 enemies out. Done. Boom. The war continues for several weeks. Then there's a sort of a family reunion. Henry meets Louis, Henry Jr., Richard, and Geoffrey. The rebel army is approaching a town in Normandy called Verneuil. Now, Henry doesn't want to lose Verneuil. That would be a disaster. So he puts a load of money and men into its defences. Henry then challenges his sons and King Louis to settle it like men. Let's get this done once and for all. Let's have a battle. Come on, outside, battle now. Come on, you, me, go. And they bottle it. They go. King Louis and his son go, bugger that, we're going. And they didn't have what it takes to take on dear old daddy. But what they did manage to do was to burn the nearby town. But then their army abandons them and they fight. And another victory to Henry. So in August, Henry wins a triumphant battle against the rebels in Brittany after marching his men 200 miles in 2 days. That's insane. In October, the Earl of Leicester, who's leading the rebel cause in England, he's routed in a battle in Suffolk. Now, Leicester, his army is butchered, whilst Leicester himself is taken prisoner and placed in prison in Normandy. Now, apparently, Leicester's wife, Petronilla, I think is how, I'm not sure if that's pronounced right, she also took part in the battle wearing male armour. Now, one writer from the time said that she was bold enough to join the battles as she thought the Englishmen and the royalist army was better at boasting and drinking and eating, well, crap, basically. And when they were out fighting, she was caught hiding in a ditch and she was captured. But fair play to her for sticking on the armour and getting in with it. Fair play. That takes some guts, especially for the 12th century. But as winter approaches, the weather has gotten too bad for fighting, so a truce is agreed. The truce lasts until spring 1174. The war without love is Henry's for the winning. He has proved himself over and over that he is in fact in a different league with his sons, but his sons are still estranged from him, and they'd already rejected a peace offering in the autumn. Henry had offered them all the money, but they didn't want money, they wanted power. But for Henry to really win the war, he needed more than just all of his experience and skills on a battlefield and to win over hostages. What Henry really needed now was a sign from God. He needed a miracle. In March 1174, as soon as the truce period ended, the war without love started again. This time it was bloodier and nastier than ever. The focus of the rebels is now England. Their plan is to hit England in two directions. Henry Jr. is preparing an invasion force to arrive from the southeast, but first they hit the north with an invasion led by King of Scots William the Lion. The problem is the 32-year-old king doesn't have the military strength or know-how to break English castles. But what he does is lead a terror campaign across the countryside, being backed by Flemish mercenaries. That has been paid off by Henry Jr., whose invasion fleet is now ever closer to being ready. King Henry realizes that the only way England will be saved is for him to get over there himself. So in early July, he leaves Normandy and he's taken a small army of mercenaries as well as highly valued prisoners that include his wife Eleanor, the Earl of Leicester, and Henry Jr.'s wife Margaret, who has been kept as prisoner since the revolt began. Now, the moment Henry lands in England, he headed straight to the one place he thinks that he can win the war without raising his sword once. Canterbury Cathedral. Henry arrives on the outskirts of Canterbury on the 12th of July in 1174. But he's not a king, not for now. Instead, he walks barefoot, wearing only a loose hanging rough wool shift. Henry walks through the streets barefoot until he reaches the castle, and he goes to the shrine of his one-time friend turned nemesis, Thomas Becket, now a glorified saint who has been canonized by the Pope the year before. Henry is in front of Becket's tomb and he confesses to everyone who can hear him. The murder of Thomas Becket was his fault. He then stripped off his shirt and he had the monks of the cathedral beat him with sticks. The monks take several blows each. Blood is pouring down Henry's back, but he doesn't stop. After the beatings, he's fasting all night, praying for God to have mercy on him and help him defeat his enemies, not defend them, sorry. Henry's brilliant political propaganda works. The very next morning in Northumberland, near Alnwick Castle, William the Lion is just finishing up his breakfast when he suddenly sees an army approaching that's bearing King Henry II's banners. They're coming over the horizon, and William barely has time to organise his own troops when the attack begins. Now, after a short battle, William's horse is killed and falls on top of him, trapping William the Lion underneath. William is quickly captured and taken as prisoner. Now, messengers quickly try to track down Henry and tell him the news. Thomas Becket has answered his prayers. Another major player in the rebel army has been captured. Now, Henry Jr., he wouldn't dare invade now that William the Lion has been captured. The war in England is over. Henry now puts his final chess piece on the board. In France, King Louis and the three princes and the few remaining allies are getting prepared to attack the Norman capital of Rouen. King Henry arrives and there's panic. Louis and Henry Jr. run away. King Louis, who paid for the whole rebellion, has wasted every single penny. Henry's three sons had gambled everything on the rebellion and lost. There is nothing that they can do but to go sulking back to their father, hoping that they will be forgiven. But will Henry forgive his sons? Or does he want revenge? In 1174, King Henry II had 20 castles pulled down across England. They all belonged to the lords that chose to rebel and join his sons. Henry, he had actually been quite nice to those involved in the war without love. He hadn't had anyone mutilated or executed, but Henry wants retribution against the lords that really should have known better. And he wants a reminder for those who chose to go up against him. Henry now has to decide what to do with the main rebels, his family. So a treaty was made on the 30th of September 1174, and it pretty much looks like the rebellion never happened. Henry Jr. will keep his rule of England, Normandy and Anjou, although he has to accept that his father can take lands as and when he pleases. And to sweeten the deal, Henry gives Henry Jr.'s pocket money a massive boost. Richard and Geoffrey also receives raises. Richard gets half the revenue of Poitou, and Geoffrey gets half the revenue of Brittany. With Richard, though, there's a condition attached. He was the one who helped raise Aquitaine in rebellion, and there's still trouble there. So Henry sends Richard there with an army to sort it out. Henry knows that out of all of his sons, Richard is the most gifted soldier, and he wants Richard to learn a lesson. The Earls of Leicester and Chester are given prison sentences of 2 years and have several of their castles pulled down. King William the Lion is released in 1174, but only after he signs a treaty in which he agrees to swear that King Henry is his overlord and Scotland is under Henry's rule. And now it's time for his wife Eleanor. Henry doesn't just want to punish her, he wants her broken. Eleanor has remained under house arrest in Salisbury, and Eleanor had wanted to live the rest of her years out in her beloved Aquitaine. And Henry knew that. But he doesn't just stop at having Eleanor kept prisoner in England. In 1176, Henry tells Eleanor that on the basis of her rebellion, they should get a divorce. Now, Henry suggests that she retires and to a nunnery, and he also informs her that he is sending off their youngest daughter, Joan, to marry the King of Sicily. Joan has been in England since 1174, and it's quite possible that she spent a lot of that time with her mother. Henry is really trying to emotionally destroy Eleanor, but Eleanor stands tall. She tells Henry that it is in fact illegal to force her to go into a nunnery under church rules, and she knows that Henry can't afford another blow up with the church. So Henry may have won the war without love, but Eleanor certainly had one up on Henry. And there is that. That is the war without love. That is the son's rebellion, or should I say the whole family's rebellion. And if you enjoyed the video, please do give this a big thumbs up and share and subscribe and keep being bloody wonderful, because that's what you all are. You're amazing. And let me know what you think of the video. Let me know what you think of the family in the comments below. And if you have any recommendations for future videos, please do put them down in the comments. I do love reading all of your comments. I do try to respond to all your comments, but sometimes YouTube don't let me know that there's actually a comment, which is nice of them. So, but just give this a big thumbs up, because it lets YouTube know that you like it and we can keep this channel growing. Anyway, I'm going to stop on rambling and let you get on with the rest of your day and just enjoy whatever you're going to do. But in the meantime, look after yourselves, and I'll see you all soon for the next one.